and welcome to the Behavior Education Connection, the podcast that works to connect the world of behavior analysis and the world of education. We focus on topics important to behavior analysts who work in the public schools and those who support them. Join us and spend time gaining insights and ideas as our host talks with fellow behavior analysts as well as other experts in the field.
Welcome to our newest episode. I want to welcome today Paige Carter from Caroline County Public Schools. Paige, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, sure. I'm the special education director here for Caroline County Public Schools. This is my first year in that role. Interesting year to do anything for the first time, I can tell you that. But I'm also a board certified behavior analyst, and I came to that part of my career via special education. I was a teacher, a special education teacher, and encountered students with autism right off the bat and figured out really quickly that I was going to need to know more. Eventually behavior analysis became that path. And I do not regret that move in any way.
Well, we're glad to have you, and I really do appreciate you joining me today. So today we are actually going to talk about practicing behavior analysis in a rural school division. And you are in Caroline County, which is pretty much a rural school division, I would categorize it as. But just so we're all kind of on the same page, because I think we may not all have the same definition, what is a rural school division?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I go back to my definitions from social studies in the fourth grade, right? What's rural, what's suburban, what's urban. But here in Caroline County, we have one high school, but we serve a very large geographic area. And we don't have any area that I would consider to be urban in any way. We're very tractor driven here in Caroline, still a lot of family farms and a lot of distance between bus stops. And I think that probably defines a rural school division, but I think the large geographic area, but not the population. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I appreciate that. We love to, behavior analysts, we love to operationalize everything that we talk about. But I think it's helpful that we have kind of a good sense of what we're talking about today. So a lot of times rural divisions may not have behavior analysts or are just starting to get behavior analysts in their school divisions. So I guess the first question is, why would we talk about rural school divisions and behavior analysis? Or why should we maybe be talking about it?
Well, I think that students in rural school divisions have behavior, right? Everyone has behavior. And I will tell you, in a rural school division, we don't have the resources always to have a variety of supports and services that you may have in a larger school division. And so I think that it's probably more important. I'm probably showing my bias, but probably more important in rural school divisions because there isn't that expertise at the ready. Here in Caroline, I'm a behavior analyst, but I can't always serve in that role. And I do have a behavior specialist who supports the FBA and BIP process here, but that's fairly new. And so I think in talking to my counterparts in Region 3, which is a large portion of Region 3 is very rural. And we talked about sharing a contract even with a behavior analyst who might be willing to drive out. I'm right off of 95, but some of the divisions in Region 3 are hours from here. So they're more remote and just don't have access to behavior analysts. So I think it's important to talk about it because a lot of students end up riding a bus to a private day school far, far away when really what they just needed was a behavior analyst.
Yeah, I love your point that, your students have behaviors too. Well, of course, because we all do, right? And who doesn't benefit from having a behavior analyst around?
Right.
So, you bring up some really good points, but I think that there are some nuances to rural divisions, right, that are a little bit different from maybe our urban or suburban neighbors. And so what are some of those things that are important to think about in a rural division?
Well, I think in a rural division, some of the things that might be true in other divisions are like all of the students have a pediatrician that they regularly see. All of the there are some things you expect when you have access to services just a short drive down the street. Well, here, I know a lot of people who only go into town to shop once a month. So and that's just an example of access to resources, right? If the Dollar General doesn't have it or Food Lion doesn't have it, we're going to wait. And I think that's true of a lot of resources that families might be able to access as well. There isn't, even for other kinds of services, you have to travel so far to get them. So there's this make do, can do kind of attitude in rural school divisions. I think rural school divisions are a little more creative sometimes with solutions for kids because they have to be. The resources just aren't there. But I think the other thing that I've encountered in rural school divisions across my career is that people don't know what they don't know. So behavior analysis, is not part of the conversation. It's not something we don't have. And I don't know if I should knock on wood or be hoping that it comes soon, but we don't have a lot of activity from outside agencies beyond what is required. We don't have a lot of advocates talking to parents about ABA. We don't have a community, a support group for families. So it is very, very different. People don't know about ABA here as much.
I think that's, I think you're right. I think, we've seen, I'm sure this is true other places, but in Virginia, we've seen kind of I want to say like a top-down trend, but what I'm really talking about is geographically, right? Mm-hmm. Things we started seeing a lot of behavior analysis in the Northern Virginia area and kind of down the 95 corridor. And now I think we're starting to see the spread west, which, as a behavior analyst, I'm going to say is a really positive thing.
Absolutely.
Great. But you're right. I think there are still people that don't know what behavior analysis is or have misconceptions about what it is and what behavior analysts do. There's people that think we only work with kids with autism, which of course is not true. Or we only work with the most significantly impacted students, which also is not true.
Right.
So one of the things I've been thinking about is, as a behavior analyst, if I want to work in a rural division, what are some things that I might want to consider before I put my name on my contract there?
Well, I think there are going to be things that I celebrate about a rural school division that might be alarming to others, but
hopefully not too alarming.
Well, we only have 5 schools in the entire division. So you're going to know your constituents, your students, your consumers. You're going to know them. You're going to know, it won't be a one and done at a school because there's only 5. And so you'll be everywhere. I think in a rural school division too, because there aren't as many personnel, you also wear different hats. So it may be that you take on roles that you might not take on in a larger division that already has behavior specialists and other kinds of folks. And then the behavior analysis or BCBA becomes a very specific job. There isn't a lot of specificity in a rural school division. I know that one special ed director that I know is also the director of special transportation, or director of transportation, all of it. So, I mean, it depends on what the division needs. And so sometimes in a rural school division, you might take on a little bit things that you might not think of as connected to behavior analysis. I also think that in a rural school division, there's the opportunity to really get to know the families. And home visits are not unheard of here because families may not have transportation, or it's 20 minutes all the way to the school, and that's a lot of gas money. So in addition to being rural, we also have 4 of our schools are Title I schools. The poverty level is pretty high here. And so families don't have a lot of resources. And so there's a lot of working together across disciplines to support families, which is a really awesome thing coming together. We also have really great relationships with a lot of community organizations. And so there is a lot of opportunity to do some cool things in a rural school division because behavior analysis is so new.
Yeah. And, I was going to ask you for some advantages and drawbacks, but I think you've hit on a lot of them. I think where you work is kind of a reflection of what you like and who you are. And, I'm kind of with you. I've worked in non-rural divisions for a while, but like I like the rural division. I like the get to know pieces. You do get to know your families. You really get to know those teachers, and you get to know your related service people. And you don't have to be everywhere because there's only so many places to be, which can be really nice. But you might have to travel quite a bit between schools, and you might run into some situations that you may not in other divisions. So
I think you're not spread as thin, and you are able to go a little deeper with your work. Because if
that's a good way of putting what I'm trying to get to.
Because I think if you're in a behavior analyst is a hot commodity, right? If you've got one, you're going to use them in every possible place that you can. And I think in a rural school division, there aren't as many. Yes, we need to. And even if that's sprinkling, to the best of our ability. But in a rural school division, that wouldn't happen. So I feel like where you might feel pressed for time, or, oh gosh, I wish I had time to, those kinds of things in a larger school division. In a rural school division, that would not be the case. You would have the opportunity to go a little deeper.
Yeah. Paige, do you have any advice for someone who's kind of deciding where they want to work and maybe considering a rural division?
Well, I think my advice would be, if you're considering that and there's a position, posted, and I have a feeling there's going to be some positions posted in the coming years, just about everywhere. But I think that if that's something that interests you, call the director of special education, ask for an appointment, ask some questions, make a list of things that you really want to know. I would be willing to talk to anyone who is interested in a rural school division, not just Caroline, because I think the deeper we can get our behavior analysts, the better we'll be as a Commonwealth in supporting our kids. So, I'm all about helping, but I think make a list of questions and ask those questions wherever you want to go. So you'll know, because what I have learned in Region 3 is that we have some things in common. Of course, we all follow the same regulations, but how we tackle things are very different in different places. So I would just really ask the questions that you want to know.
Yeah. And I think that's good advice, no matter where you're thinking about working, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Getting as much information as you possibly can. Well, Paige, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you have any last minute thoughts before we sign off today?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to share about rural school divisions.
Well,
they don't get a lot of press.
Well, I do appreciate your time today, and thank you to everyone listening, and we will see you next episode. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Behavior Education Connection. Join us next time for another great conversation about behavior analysis in the schools. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. Sending out a special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for supporting our work. We look forward to connecting with you all again soon.